Grade 12s are this time of year concerned about their future at institutions of higher learning in the new year, with finances being of particular importance. This year saw a string of violent protests as tertiary institutions over insufficient funding for tuition. Students largely blamed the state of affairs on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. Today, I am now joined by the man at the helm of the hot seats at NSFAS. Msulwa Daka is the CEO and will share with us the challenges they face and how they plan to deal with them in 2015. A very good morning to you, Mr. Daka, and welcome to ANN7.
Good morning to you.
Firstly, what is your response to the crisis that we did have throughout the course of the year, with students saying that they had applied for student funding and then them getting rejected, or some of them had been, in their second year and would be told in their third year, final year of their degree, they were not going to be funded?
Our response as players in this sector has been to cooperate more effectively. Ourselves, the Department of Higher Education and Training, and the Vice Chancellors, which is HISA, to make sure that we give information to students on time. The problem in 2014 was some of the students that we saw protesting in the streets eventually got funded. It was just a matter of communication that was late to the students. We now this year are planning to communicate much more effectively, planning to communicate on time. We are, however, still faced with the challenge that we're not able to fund all the students that apply for funding. That's a reality. But we want to deal with all those things that we can deal with, which is the timing of the decision-making, informing students, and so that we ensure that we can put on the side. We can deal with the much broader challenges of gaining resources for more and more students to be funded.
Now let's just look at that. What are some of the requirements for someone who wants to apply for funding from the National Student Financial Scheme? What are some of the requirements for getting accepted as well as being rejected?
Two key criteria that we have in place as a scheme is students must come from financially disadvantaged families, which is poor families and working class families. Okay. The second is they should be making academic progress. Okay. We're not necessarily asking students to be distinction students, but they should be passing from one stage to the next so that they can continue to be funded. If you don't make that criteria, you therefore don't get funded.
Okay, so take us through your plan. You said that this year, of course, you are going to be having another detailed plan, of course, so putting in contingency measures, making sure that communication is there on time for students. Take us through your plan for the next year.
What we're doing with the universities next year is we'll be communicating to the universities. We're communicating already to the universities now in December, so that when students come in 2015 to register in January, the universities already know how much money they have, how much they can allocate to the students, so that there is no dispute in terms of the amount of money that is available. But also from the perspective of NSFAS, we'll also be communicating much more effectively with the sector, with students, with parents, with the vice chancellors, so that when the beginning of the year starts, students know where to go. They know who to ask for information. Because what we have found is part of the frustration on the side of students is they don't know where to go. They don't know who to speak to. And we're now working with the universities, because the universities are the agents of NSFAS. That's where the financial aid scheme is administered by and large by the universities themselves. That's why we want to work more closely with the universities, so that that message does not get lost in translation between us and the students.
Okay, now what is your budget? We did seem to be seeing that there was some sort of a shortfall or miscommunication of a shortfall for this financial year, being 2014. What is your budget like for next year? What is your budget?
We're an entity that fundraise. Therefore, our budget keeps on moving up and up and up. But when all is said and done next year, we're hoping to reach at least 9.5 billion in terms of confirmed funding for students. But we continue to fundraise. Even if someone comes to me now today and say there is more 10 million rand, we will take it and add into the budget available. Some public sector entities, because the budget gets published in and around February, they can only confirm their numbers around February in terms of how much money they will make available to the scheme. But we are hoping that at least we'll reach the 9.5 9.5 billion mark for 2015. And that we think would be able to cover about 450,000 students. Costs are increasing at universities also, and that is also one of the challenges that we have in the sector. But we are engaging with the sector so that we can be able to understand what are the cost drivers and be sure that what we are paying for and we are getting value for money as the NSFAS.
Okay. Now, what is your response to some of the allegations from some students saying that they had completed their first year, they had completed their second year, and coming to their third year, they've been told that they would simply were going to have to pay for the rest of their tuition by themselves?
What happens currently in the scheme, students are required to apply every year, which basically means that every year you get assessed and you either get a result whether accepted or not accepted. Part of what we're doing going forward is to change that. We've started with a few universities, only 4 universities, to pilot a new system where students can apply once and be enrolled
for the
duration of their studies.
Okay.
And the only criteria then for progression will be if you are making academic progress.
Okay.
If you are passing, then you are confirmed funding.
Okay.
But we are starting that with only 4 of the older universities, and the 2 new universities are also using the same system. We're testing that and seeing how it's going to work. Because part of the other challenges, and the minister has already spoken about this, is about some of the fraudulent applications that we have received, more so through the affidavits that students sign, and some of the affidavits are not necessarily truthful affidavits. Then we don't want to roll forward a problem that has been created in the past. We just want to make sure first that the information that we have is credible before we can decide to roll forward students so that they can get.
But just before we wrap it up, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just before we wrap it up, we are pressed for time. What type of funding is it? Do you supply the students with funding and they have to pay you back, or does it work on a merit basis that if you pass, you don't pay back some of the money? You do find some of the bursaries, they pay for you for your 3-year degree, but if you fail, in your last year, you'd have to pay back a sum of the bursary or all of it. How exactly does it work? Is it just a loan that students have to pay back once they are working?
Firstly, we offer full bursaries,
Okay.
mainly in the scarce skills categories. Secondly, we offer loans that are converted to bursaries should students pass.
Okay.
If, for instance, your student pass all their courses, we convert 40% of that into a bursary.
Okay.
But in the final year, up to 100% of that loan can be converted to a bursary if student qualifies to graduate.
Okay, thank you very much for clearing that up for me. Of course, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. I was joined in the studio by the CEO to share with us some of the challenges that they will face as well as their plan to deal with them in 2015. Thank you very much, Mr. Gata, for joining me in studio. By the CEO to share with us some of the challenges that they will face as well as their plan to deal with them in 2015. Thank you very much, Mr. Gata, for joining me in studio.